How dare someone break into your home and then try to sue you? This is exactly what happened to us, and I still can't believe the audacity of some people. Let me tell you the whole story from the beginning, because it gets so much worse than you could possibly imagine. My husband Marcus and I had been living in our little Victorian cottage for about 3 years when this nightmare began. We'd fallen in love with the place the moment we saw it, despite all its quirks and needed repairs. The house was built in 1873, and it still had most of its original features, including these gorgeous wooden doors with intricate carvings. The front door was particularly special, made from solid oak with brass fixtures that had aged into this beautiful patina. Sure, the wood had weakened over the years, and we knew we should probably replace it with something more secure, but we loved the character it gave our home. That door had welcomed families for over a century. Little did we know it would become the center of our legal nightmare. We adopted our dog, Bruno, 2 years before the incident. He's a German Shepherd mix, about 70 pounds, with the most expressive brown eyes you've ever seen. When we got him from the shelter, they told us he'd been surrendered by an elderly woman who could no longer care for him. Bruno was the gentlest soul. He'd never shown an ounce of aggression toward anyone. Kids in the neighborhood would run up to pet him during walks, and he'd just wag his tail and lean into their little hands. Our vet always commented on what a sweet temperament he had during checkups. Bruno's favorite spot in the whole house was this worn rug right by the front door. Every night, without fail, he'd curl up there after his evening walk, like he was standing guard over his family. The night it happened was a Friday in late September. Marcus and I had gone to bed around 11 after watching a movie. It was one of those perfect autumn nights, cool enough that we'd open the bedroom window to let in the fresh air. Our neighborhood was usually quiet, mostly young families and retirees. We'd chosen this area specifically because it felt safe, the kind of place where people still left their porch lights on for each other. I remember I just started to drift off when I heard it. At first, my sleep-fogged brain couldn't process what the sound was. A loud thud, then another. Then the unmistakable sound of wood splintering. I sat bolt upright in bed, my heart already racing. Marcus was awake too, reaching for his phone on the nightstand. "What is that?" I whispered, though I don't know why I was whispering. The sounds were getting louder. Another massive thud, and then we heard it. Our beautiful antique door giving way with a crack that made me flinch. Then heavy, stumbling footsteps in our entryway. Someone was in our house. I've never felt fear like that before. It's different when it's actually happening, when someone has violated the safety of your home. Your heart doesn't just race, it feels like it's trying to break through your ribcage. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold onto Marcus's arm. Then we heard Bruno. Our gentle, sweet Bruno started barking in a way I'd never heard before. It was deep and aggressive and protective. We heard more stumbling, a man's voice slurring something we couldn't make out, and then Bruno's barking changed to a different sound entirely. Marcus was already on the phone with 911, his voice surprisingly steady as he gave our address and told them someone had broken into our home. I was frozen, listening to the chaos downstairs. The intruder was yelling now, cursing, and Bruno was still making those aggressive sounds. "Stay here," Marcus said, but there was no way I was letting him go downstairs alone. We crept to our bedroom door together. I grabbed the baseball bat we kept in the closet, my hands still trembling. When we got to the top of the stairs, we could see into the entryway. Our front door was hanging off its hinges, completely destroyed. And there, in the middle of our home, was a young guy, probably early 20s, wearing a college sweatshirt. He was clearly drunk, swaying on his feet, and Bruno had him cornered against the wall. The guy's arm was bleeding, and he was trying to kick at Bruno while yelling incoherently. "Get your dog off me," he slurred. "This is my house. I live here." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This stranger had broken into our home and was now claiming it was his? Marcus yelled down at him to stay where he was, that the police were coming. The guy looked up at us with unfocused eyes, seeming genuinely confused about why we were there. Bruno never let up. He kept the intruder pinned there, barking whenever the guy tried to move. I'd never been more grateful for our dog in my life. He was protecting us, doing exactly what his instincts told him to do when a threat entered his territory. The police arrived within 6 minutes, though it felt like an eternity. We heard the sirens and saw the flashing lights through a broken doorway. 2 officers came in with their hands on their weapons, quickly assessing the situation. As soon as they entered, Marcus called Bruno off, and our brave dog immediately came to us. us, though he kept his eyes on the intruder. The young man, who the officers later identified as Tyler Brennan, could barely stand. His blood alcohol level, we later learned, was nearly 3 times the legal limit. He kept insisting he lived there, that this was his apartment, even as the officers were checking his ID and seeing an address on the complete opposite side of town. One officer stayed with Tyler while the other came up to talk to us. We explained everything, how we'd been asleep, and heard him breaking down our door. The officer examined Bruno, who by then had calmed down and was back to his normal gentle self, leaning against my legs and looking up at me with those worried eyes. You could tell he was stressed by all the commotion. They took Tyler to the emergency room in an ambulance. The bite on his arm was pretty deep and would need stitches. Before they left, the officers took detailed statement from us, photographed the broken door, and documented everything. They were actually really kind about the whole thing, especially when they saw how shaken up we were. "Your dog did exactly what he should have done," one of the officers told us. "He protected his home and his family from an intruder." That's doggy justice right there. That phrase stuck with me. Doggy justice. It felt right. Bruno hadn't attacked anyone randomly. He defended our home from someone who'd literally broken down our door. We spent the rest of that night cleaning up the mess and trying to secure our doorway with some boards Marcus found in the garage. Neither of us could sleep. We kept replaying it in our minds, thinking about what could have happened if Bruno hadn't been there, if Tyler had made it upstairs, if he'd been violent instead of just drunk and confused. The next morning, we had to deal with all the practical matters. We filed a police report, contacted our insurance company, and started the process of getting our door replaced. Our insurance agent was sympathetic, but explained that our policy wouldn't cover the damage since it was caused by a criminal act. We'd have to pay out of pocket. We decided to upgrade to a much more secure door. No more antique charm. We wanted steel reinforcement and a deadbolt that could withstand a battering ram. It cost us nearly $2,000, money we hadn't budgeted for, but we needed to feel safe in our own home again. In the days following the break-in, we also had to take Bruno to the vet to have him checked out and to get documentation of his health status. The police had requested all his veterinary records, vaccination history, and any behavioral assessments. Our vet, Dr. Patterson, had known Bruno since we adopted him. She wrote a detailed letter explaining that Bruno had no history of aggression, had always been gentle during examinations, and was current on all his vaccinations, including rabies. "This dog is one of the sweetest I've seen in my practice," Dr. Patterson told us. "What he did was pure instinct. Any dog would have reacted the same way to someone breaking into their home." We provided all of this documentation to the police. They contacted our vet directly to verify everything. A few weeks later, we learned that Tyler Brennan had been charged with misdemeanor breaking and entering. The prosecutor's office contacted us about whether we wanted to press additional charges, but after talking it over, Marcus and I decided against it. Tyler had no criminal record. He was a junior at the local university, apparently a decent student, and from what we gathered, this was completely out of character for him. He'd been at a party, gotten way too drunk, and in his intoxicated state, had somehow convinced himself that our house was his apartment building. It was stupid and reckless, but we didn't want to ruin his life over one terrible mistake. We figured the misdemeanor charge, the medical bills he'd have to pay, and the sheer embarrassment of the situation would be enough of a lesson. The misdemeanor conviction was finalized about 2 months after the incident. Tyler pleaded guilty, was sentenced to community service and probation, and that was that. We never heard from him directly. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd put us through, but we didn't expect one. We just wanted to move on, and we did move on, or at least we tried to. Our new door was installed. Bruno went back to sleeping peacefully in his favorite spot, though for a while he'd startle at any unusual sounds at night. Marcus and I gradually stopped jumping at every noise. The neighborhood felt safe again. Life returned to normal. Over a year passed. Honestly, we rarely thought about that night anymore. It had become just a crazy story we'd tell occasionally about the time a drunk college kid broke into our house and our dog became a hero. We'd even started to laugh about the doggy justice comment. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon in November, we got the letter. I remember I was making dinner when Marcus came in from checking the mail. He had this strange expression on his face, somewhere between confused and angry. He was holding a thick envelope with a law firm's return address. "You need to read this," he said, handing it to me. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from Patterson Associates, a personal injury law firm. As I read it, I felt that same fear from the night of the break-in creeping back into my chest. The letter stated that they represented Tyler Brennan and his mother, Patricia Brennan. It went on to explain that Tyler had suffered significant physical and emotional trauma as a result of being attacked by our vicious and uncontrolled animal. The letter claimed that we, as dog owners, were were liable for all damages resulting from the bite, including medical expenses, pain and suffering, and emotional distress. They were demanding we pay $23,000. $23,000 for injuries sustained while committing a crime in our home. I had to read it 3 times before it fully sank in. They were actually trying to hold us responsible for what happened to someone who broke into our house, someone who destroyed our property, someone who terrorized us in the middle of the night. The letter gave us 14 days to respond with payment, or they would file a lawsuit seeking even greater damages. There was no itemized list of medical expenses, no documentation, just a number and a threat. Pay up or face legal action. Marcus and I were beyond furious. We were outraged. How could they possibly think this was acceptable? How could Tyler and his mother look at this situation and decide that we owed them money? This is insane, Marcus kept saying, pacing around our kitchen. He broke into our house. He was convicted of crime. How is any of this our fault? I was thinking about Bruno, our sweet, protective Bruno who had done nothing wrong. The letter had called him vicious and uncontrolled. That couldn't have been further from the truth. Bruno had been controlled. He'd been in his own home, protecting his family from an intruder. What were we supposed to do? Train him not to react when someone smashes through our door in the middle of the night. We didn't sleep that night either. We stayed up researching premises liability laws, dog bite statutes, and anything else we could find that might help us understand our legal position. For what we could tell, most states had exceptions to dog bite liability when the person bitten was committing a crime or trespassing. But we weren't lawyers, and the legal jargon was confusing and contradictory. The next morning, we called our homeowner's insurance company. Surely this was what insurance was for, right? Our agent listened to the situation and then delivered more bad news. Our policy had a dog bite liability clause, but it specifically excluded coverage if the bite occurred while the dog was protecting the property from a criminal intruder. We were on our own. We knew we needed a lawyer. We asked friends for recommendations and ended up contacting Sarah Chun, an attorney who specialized in property law and personal injury defense. We met with her that Friday, bringing every piece of documentation we had. The police reports, Bruno's vet records, Tyler's conviction paperwork, everything. Sarah listened to our story, reviewed all the documents, and then leaned back in her chair with a slight smile. This is one of the most frivolous claims I've seen in a while, she said. They don't have a case. Not even close. The relief we felt was enormous, but Sarah cautioned us not to celebrate yet. The problem is, even frivolous lawsuits cost money to defend, she explained. They're probably counting on you being too scared or too financially strapped to fight back. A lot of people just settle to make it go away. But we weren't going to do that. This wasn't just about the money, though $23,000 would have devastated us financially. This was about the principle. This was about standing up to people who were trying to profit from their own bad behavior. This was about protecting Bruno and making sure no one could label him as dangerous when he'd done nothing wrong. Sarah drafted a response letter to Patterson and Associates. It was professional but firm, laying out exactly why their claim had no merit. She included copies of the police reports showing Tyler's conviction for breaking and entering. She included the documentation that Bruno had no history of aggression and was properly contained in our home at the time of the incident. She cited the relevant state laws that provided exceptions to dog bite liability for criminal intruders. The letter concluded by stating that we would vigorously defend against any lawsuit and would seek to recover our legal fees and costs if they proceeded with such a clearly frivolous claim. We sent it certified mail and waited. Those next few weeks were stressful. Every time the phone rang or mail arrived, we tensed up, wondering if it would be notice of a lawsuit. We tried to go about our normal lives, but it was always there in the back of our minds. We talked about what we'd do if they actually sued. How much would it cost to defend? Would we have to go to trial? Would they try to have Bruno declared dangerous? That last possibility terrified us most. In our state, if a dog is declared dangerous, there are all sorts of restrictions. Special insurance, reinforced kennels, muzzles in public. And in extreme cases, the dog can be ordered to be put down. The thought of losing Bruno because he'd protected us was unbearable. But then, about 3 weeks after Sarah sent our response, we got another letter from Patterson and Associates. This one was much shorter. It stated that after reviewing the circumstances of the case, their clients had decided not to pursue legal action at this time. There was no apology, no acknowledgement that their claim had been baseless from the start. Just a brief notification that they were dropping it. We'd won. Marcus and I celebrated that night. Probably more than the situation warranted, but it felt like such a huge weight had been lifted. We'd stood up to bullies and won. We'd protected our home, our dog, and our principles. Sarah explained to us later what had probably happened. Tyler and his mother had likely shopped around for lawyers, telling a one-sided version of the story that focused on the dog bite and minimized or omitted the breaking and entering. Some personal injury attorneys work on contingency, meaning they only get paid if they win or settle. So they'll take on questionable cases, hoping the other side will settle quickly to avoid legal costs. But once they saw our documentation and realized we were prepared to fight, they knew they couldn't win. No jury would award damages to someone who was injured while committing a crime. And if they lost, they'd get nothing and waste a lot of time and resources. They were hoping you'd be easy targets, Sarah told us. You weren't. Looking back on the whole experience now, I'm struck by how violated we felt not just once, but twice. The first violation was obvious, someone breaking into our home and destroying our sense of security. But the second violation, the lawsuit threat, was in some ways worse. At least Tyler's break-in was the result of drunken stupidity. The lawsuit was calculated. It was Tyler and his mother sitting down and deciding that they deserved money from us, the victims of his crime. I think about what would have happened if we hadn't kept such good documentation. What if we hadn't gotten the police reports or Bruno's vet records? What if we couldn't afford a lawyer and had just panicked and tried to settle? There are probably people in situations like ours who do exactly that, who pay money they don't owe just to make the threat go away. That's what makes me angriest about the whole thing. The Brennans were counting on us being too scared or too uninformed to fight back. They were trying to profit from our fear. We also think about what message it would have sent if we'd paid. It would have said that criminals can break into your home, get hurt in the process, and then successfully sue you for their injuries. It would have said that you're not allowed to have a dog that protects your property. It would have been wrong on every level. Bruno is still sleeping by our front door every night, though now it's a much sturdier door that would take more than a drunk college student to break down. He's still the same gentle, loving dog he always was. Kids still run up to pet him on walks. Our vet still comments on his sweet temperament, but he's also our protector. He proved that on that September night when he stood between us and a potential threat. He did exactly what dogs have been doing for thousands of years, guarding their pack and their territory. And we'll never apologize for that or let anyone make us feel like we should. The whole experience taught us some valuable lessons. Document everything. Keep records. Stand up for yourself when you're in the right. And maybe most importantly, don't assume that just because someone threatens legal action, they actually have a legitimate case. We paid Sarah Chun for her time, and it was worth every penny for the peace of mind and the victory. We never heard from Tyler or his mother again. We don't know if Tyler learned anything from the experience or if he just moved on to his next scheme. We hope he grew up and realized how wrong it was to try to profit from his own criminal behavior, but we'll probably never know. As for us, we've moved on too. Our house feels like home again. We've made more improvements, not just the door, but new windows and a security system. We feel safe. Bruno feels safe. And we know that if anything ever happened again, we'd be prepared to defend ourselves and our rights. The whole ordeal lasted about 16 months from start to finish. From that terrifying night when our door was smashed into the day we got the letter saying the lawsuit threat was dropped. 16 months of stress and fear and anger and fighting for what was right. But we won, and that matters. If you enjoyed this story, like and subscribe. Your support helps us share more real-life experiences and legal nightmares that people actually face. Drop a comment below if you've ever dealt with something similar. We'd love to hear your stories too.